Hello everyone, welcome back to Miami. This is Formula One and it is time for Grand Prix qualifying at the International Autodrome. After all of the drama of the sprint, we now have dry conditions as we bring you the battle for Grand Prix pole around the circuit, celebrating its fourth Grand Prix weekend. Tomorrow, 57 laps on the board, it is 5.4 kilometres, 3.3 miles and 3 DRS zones to enable the drivers to go quicker over one lap and promote overtaking over the race distance. We have 19 turns and a lot learned in the wet, in the dry, and we go back to dry conditions, which means we have the C5, the C4 and the C3, the soft, the medium and the hard tyres available to those in the field. We'll be using the softs to set the fastest times. And we find ourselves qualifying once again. It is round 6. Miami in the USA, about to see its second qualifying session of the weekend. We move from the sprint to the Grand Prix format, and it's a beautiful day once again after the earlier rain shower, which was at one point torrential. The track temperature is 45 degrees, the air temperature is 28, and the fans have made their way back into the grandstands. We reset the board in so many ways now. Everyone gets a chance to go again, and they take all of their learnings from earlier in the weekend to the car. They're able to make changes from the sprint to the Grand Prix qualifying hour. We have a look at the paddock, which is inside the stadium of the Miami Dolphins, the Hard Rock Stadium, and another great drone shot of where all the teams are camped this weekend. In the commentary box, I'm Alex Jakes, joined once again by Jolyon Pollard. Jolyon, it's just absolutely relentless this weekend.
It's busy, isn't it? Really busy. The drone's doing some lovely work through the paddock, giving us all the lovely vistas around this circuit. You say that they can put together the learnings from the sprint, but there's absolutely nothing from the sprint that anyone could take into this qualifying session now. There is, of course, from yesterday's sprint qualifying, and it was very close. Oscar Piastri came up second place, but really close behind Kimi Antonelli. Lando was third, and Max Verstappen fourth. I think those four, plus George Russell actually, that was fifth, are going to be fighting this out. Ferrari seem to be still a little far away, even though Lewis had his moment earlier on in the sprint. Charles Leclerc looking like he's going to be ready to jump in the car shortly too. And I think Verstappen can be a threat here to the pecking order that we saw yesterday. Because of the run plan Red Bull did yesterday, I don't think that was probably the perfect execution. Likewise with Russell, to be honest, in the Mercedes. So, should be super close.
Looking forward to it. Oscar Piastri is still the championship leader, but because of the timing of the safety car, that swap means that the gap is down to 9 points between him and his teammate. Verstappen's unsafe release penalty, and he missed out on what would have been 6 extra points for the World Championship. McLaren lead the way in the Constructors, 203 ahead of Mercedes on 118. Williams had a tough race with Carlos Sainz, and then the penalty for Alexander Albon announced late on, and we still don't have a final sprint race classification, but we will give you that full update when it appears on our monitors.
A lot of penalties coming in.
Yeah.
So Albon for a safety car infringement, not following the delta time when the safety car was called for Fernando Alonso, drops him out of the points from what was a good haul for Williams. Albon finishing in fourth and having great pace. Liam Lawson was given a 5-second penalty for pitching Fernando Alonso into the barriers in their fight, which was a tight moment, wasn't it, between the two, but the stewards deemed that Lawson was the instigator of that crash. And Ollie Behrman, for an unsafe release, got a 5-second penalty. So the order, as jumbled up as it was from start to finish in the sprint, is jumbled once again, but it's for minor points. The major points are coming tomorrow in the Grand Prix, and that starts here. We have seen how critical qualifying can be this season. I don't think it's going to be any different this weekend.
And we'll put a green light at the end of the pit lane, and we will send 20 of the best drivers in the world out of what we had earlier on, and it's the Salvers. Tony Behrman into the path of Nico Hülkenberg and got him that penalty. Alex Albon was the driver being penalised. Disappointment for Williams because they kept their winning run going, and Albon back into the fast lane. And then you see the different liveries. This is the first time you're joining us all weekend long. Those are the Racing Bulls in bright pink livery for this weekend. as we slowly make our way out onto the circuit once again. Everyone running the soft tyres. Free choice in Grand Prix qualifying, unlike in sprint qualifying. And we will reload the board one more time and see what the drivers can do. A little bit of knowledge from practice, and a slow move onto the circuit begins then for all out there. Of course, in sprint qualifying, placement of the car was causing some headaches. The good news for everyone is that they've got the traditional 18 minutes in order to get the job done and avoid being in the bottom five.
And of course, soft tyres as well from the get-go in this one. Used soft tyres there on Yuki Tsunoda's Red Bull. And the sprint qualifying is just that much more intense, isn't it? The short sessions, the fact that you only bolt on the softs for SQ3. So when Kimi Antonelli put it on sprint pole, it was the first time he'd run that tyre in the weekend, which was a bit of a risk for Mercedes, but it obviously worked out for them in qualifying at least, even if they couldn't convert it in the sprint earlier on. Now everyone can dial in on a set of softs and run through the usual run plan, so it's easier to find incremental gains from the setup, from your driving. There's not the compound difference.
Alex Albon's been noted for a pit lane infringement. That's popped up on our screen from race control.
We saw he inched out in front of one of the Racing Bulls, didn't he? It was that I think we were on board with Albon as he was trying to go. It's these pit lane rules are, to me, a little bit of a nonsense to be investigated for it. It's very difficult for the teams further down the pit lane to join the queue or start the queue. The queue forms up right in front of their door, and somehow they've got to try and get out there, otherwise they always have to wait for the whole rest of the field to come down, which is a bit harsh.
Yeah, you have to claim your place in the fast lane of the pit lane, otherwise you have to wait for the field to make their way by. Not the most grippy and compliant first sweepers to start the lap for Pierre Gasly. Saw he had a moment in the opening turns of the racetrack. This is the back straight where Charles Leclerc found the barriers earlier on in wet conditions. This is dry conditions into the left-hander of turn 11.
You know, it's worth remembering the washout conditions that we had to have a delayed sprint means that the rubber that we were talking about yesterday, the track evolution being so high, a lot of that rubber would have been washed away. So we're coming back to slick tyres, yes, lots more grip than earlier, but not a lot of grip compared to what the drivers are thinking is going to be the case for this session. So they've got to recalibrate a little bit and build back into it. And once again, the track evolution in this hour is going to be very, very high.
Wasn't the easiest time for Pierre Gasly yesterday. 13th on the grid for the Alpine driver. He has been as high as 4th in Grand Prix qualifying this year. That was back in Bahrain. Now in Miami, his early effort puts him into 3rd, but it's behind the two Saubers, which is not what he'll want to see. Improvements to be made from a 28.7. We go on board to Fernando Alonso. As you can see, they have repaired the car after Lawson pitched the Spanish driver into a spin at turn 12, which ended our race as a contest and decided our winner. Slightly wide moment for Alonso through the hairpin.
Somehow it keeps Fernando Alonso as a pointless scorer so far in the season. There was another chance for Fernando to get on the board, fighting it out in the lower end of the top 8 as he jumped to the top of the times. Every car is out on circuit, so anyone that had a crash earlier on, including Charles Leclerc, who we saw out of the car moments before the green light, he's in and circulating. So every car is repaired, and this is going to be a busy circuit out there, and it's got to be, everyone has to have their wits about them to keep out of the way of cars going quickly. We can see grid penalties for just innocuous impeding incidents.
Updated floor on the Red Bull for Max Verstappen, and Verstappen will be hoping to apply the pressure to the McLarens like we have seen earlier this year. 2 times he's been on pole position in 2025. Lost out on the points after that penalty for an unsafe release, a slam dunk unsafe release, and he knew at the moment that it happened into the path of Kimi Antonelli, and Verstappen goes over the line. He's 0.2 of a second quicker than Alexander Albon. Then it's Fernando Alonso in 3rd. 4th is Carlos Sainz. Then it's Doohan, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Bortoleto is ahead of Gasly. Then it's Behrman, Tsunoda and Stroll. Hamilton goes into 4th position in the classification. Our driver who finished P3 earlier on after timing the switch from inters to slicks really nicely, and the championship leader is fastest. You've always got to wait for the second McLaren though. They've always found themselves up at the top of the timing page for the last year since they won this Grand Prix 1 year ago. It's Norris only in P3 though. Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, the top 3.
But only the first flyer, Alex. Calm.
Yes.
We've got a long way to go here. Everyone's dialing in. And we got a long session again for Q1. There's still 12 more minutes to run. So some cars already retreating back to the pits. And in fact, plenty of them are coming back in after just one flyer on the soft tyre. We are 0.8 of a second away from Kimi Antonelli's pole time yesterday on the soft tyre as well. So that gives you a small reference for where the track's at in terms of grip at the moment. It's not quite where it was yesterday, but it will soon ramp up and beyond. And Piastri hits the top of the time straight away. He's a form driver. He's driving really nicely. Had the sprint really under control, apart from the variable conditions, but got the jump at the start and was doing what he needed to do. We'll still be happy with his haul of points earlier on. But he was thinking he should have actually had the pole from yesterday's qualifying. Had a bit of a mistake, carried too much speed into the final hairpin, and both McLaren drivers will be out to put that perfect lap together, because we've seen it many times. If they don't, they can be beaten not only by Verstappen but by Antonelli, and who knows, maybe George Russell.
Yeah, Oscar Piastri this year has been close or on pole. It's been an extraordinary run for him. He was 0.08 of a second away in Melbourne. He was 0.04 of a second away in Suzuka. In the Chinese sprint, he found himself
rubber down. So compared to yesterday's qualifying, you just find that as you turn in, you're starting to roll into oversteer, having to fight the car a little bit more. Maybe into some of the low-speed corners, you're just waiting for the front to rotate, or you're having the lock-up, as Hamilton did on his flyer. Just little bits of grip and not coming to you, and it becomes easier to make a mistake. And I think that's part of the reason why some of the drivers that were very quick yesterday on a new set of softs haven't managed to extract the same lap time that they were expecting from the run that they put in yesterday. So 2.5 minutes left on the clock, and not many drivers are safe with the pace that we've got. Bortoleto was a standout up in 7th, but he was out in SQ1 yesterday. And you think if Sauber can get through, they'll be very happy with Bortoleto, and he's right up there in 7th. So everyone needs to make really strong progress, and it starts right now.
We're on board with George Russell, always in the top 5 of the grid this year. On average, he's the 3rd best qualifier in the first 5 Grand Prix qualifying hours that we've run so far this year. He's in to turn 12, quickly turns into 13, little bit of a snap, little bit of oversteer.
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm talking about. The car just rolling into oversteer. Again, a little skip into oversteer between 14 and 15. He has to have 2 stabs at turning it into turn 16 there, but he's not losing a huge amount of time to Verstappen, because Verstappen's also finding these moments. The track will grip up, and more laps that get put in on the soft tyres will really help, and by the end of Q3 I'm sure we'll see much quicker lap times, but for now drivers are having to be just dancing the cars on the edge of grip.
All because of the rain shower that we had earlier on. George Russell, the car moving around a lot, but it's quick and it takes him up to 3rd position. So George Russell up to P3 ahead of his teammate, and it's a 27.0. Now this is going to be a good reference. Oliver Behrman currently 20th fastest. Where can he go? He can only improve to 19th.
Yeah, not able to put the lap together at all. Behrman didn't improve his final sector, but his first sector was fairly lousy as well. So Behrman out in 19th already. He won't get another crack at it. Charles Leclerc comes out of the final corner. It's not been an absolutely stunning first part of the lap for Charles. Needs to jump up. Both Ferraris are in danger.
9th position for Charles Leclerc. Now let's watch Pierre Gasly's lap time over the line in the blue Alpine with the pink nose, because can he escape? He can, and he demotes Lewis Hamilton into the drop zone.
He's barely done enough though, and Gasly's going to be in major trouble as well. Both Aston Martins are out there and improving. Esteban Ocon starts a flying lap now. Lewis Hamilton is still on his out lap with 25 seconds to go, but should start a flying lap with enough time as well.
He was getting out of the way of this man, Isaac Hadjar, who moves up to 6th position in the Racing Bulls. There goes the Ferrari. We're on board with Lewis Hamilton, who needs a lap to progress to the second part of qualifying.
Look at the way he's hanging on to the car though. The grip is just not there underneath Hamilton at the moment. Just having to make a load of minor adjustments at the wheel. Sweeps it into turns 4 and 5. Not able to be super aggressive on the right-hand curve of turn 5, giving that a little bit of leeway, but getting good rotation there at turn 8 for Hamilton. So he's through the first sector and crucially got a nice exit onto this long straight now up towards turn 11.
It's Gasly, Hamilton, Ocon, Stroll and Behrman in the bottom 5. Stroll has completed his lap and he is in 19th position. Hamilton needs an improvement. He's setting personal best through the first sector.
Tsunoda's in 14th. If Hamilton and Ocon can both improve, Yuki Tsunoda's in trouble as well here.
Tsunoda, who went out because of a run plan issue when it came to sprint qualifying, as we have Verstappen at the front, then Norris, Piastri, Russell and Albon at the bottom though. Hamilton under pressure. Key braking zone to come. This is where he locked up. Ocon has improved to 13th position. It's Alonso, Gasly, Hamilton, Stroll and Behrman in the bottom 5. This time Hamilton does make the apex. It's going to be his best lap of the session so far. Lewis Hamilton under pressure, but he gets through and he gets 8th position.
Tsunoda's improving. Tsunoda's now 16th and has to dig something out himself.
Yuki Tsunoda finds a lap when it matters, gets to P9 and eliminates Nico Hülkenberg, who drops down, and he is out when his teammate is going through. Lando Norris reports that he hits the wall, but it's Hülkenberg, Alonso, Gasly, Stroll and Behrman who fall at the first hurdle. Lando Norris reported that he struck the wall, but he was second fastest there. Ocon finding a lap of improvement at the end that mattered. So did Jack Doohan. The Australian driver might be under pressure, but he'll be the lead Alpine on the grid for the Grand Prix tomorrow, no matter what happens from here on in. Impressive 12th position impressive 11th position for Gabriel Bortoleto in the Sauber, and he has made it through to Q2 for the first time since the opening Grand Prix of the year.
It's a tap of the wall for Lando Norris. He managed to complete the lap. It's imperceptible. That's pretty much maximising the road, I would say, for Lando, and he managed to find a bit of time. The gap from Hulkenberg going out to Verstappen at the top, 0.6.
Unbelievably close, around a lap distance of 3.3 miles, 5.4 kilometres and 19 turns, and yet separated by 0.6 of a second. Q1 these days in Formula One is a brutal business.
Oh dear. Yeah, not the cleanest one.
And that's the thing, when you're 0.6 off the top spot and you're not putting together the cleanest lap, you get punished. Shout out to Bortoleto, who...
Oh dear. Yeah, not the cleanest one.
.13. It's a good job from Bortoleto, who can regroup, and the man that would love to put together a qualifying here to give himself a look in at points tomorrow. Hulkenberg out, Alonso be frustrated. It's another tough day for Aston Martin, and Pierre Gasly as well. 18th out of the car, marching off to go and get weighed behind Jack Doohan by 0.3.
First time that's happened in the Grand Prix format all season. Gasly, who has qualified as high as 4th, is P18 for the Miami Grand Prix. Lance Stroll in P19, that is his 4th consecutive Q1 elimination. And Behrman has been slowest in SQ1 and Q1, the driver who thought he'd scored points earlier on but was penalised for an unsafe release. Excellent performance from Gabriel Bortoleto, and for only the second time in Formula One, Bortoleto will progress into the second part of qualifying. He did it in Melbourne, and now he's done it in Miami.
And it's a nice feeling as well for a driver when you progress and your teammate hasn't progressed. Because when you're Bortoleto, you're a Formula 2 champion, but you're coming into Formula 1. He's done 5 Grand Prix so far with some showings of promise, but overall Hulkenberg's been probably the senior driver still, and he's got the points for the team. But Bortoleto has beaten Hulkenberg today, so anything more now is a bonus for him. Almost there's a little bit of pressure off, and he can go out and just really give it everything to give himself a shot at getting towards that top 10. And he knows that for the stats, which is what a lot of people care about, particularly when you're in a Sauber and scoring points is pretty difficult at the moment. He's got one over his experienced teammate today.
Just bad was traffic, sector wide, Ferrari. Just bad was traffic, sector wide, Ferrari.
Stays in the car just in case someone else gets a track limits or an issue ahead of it. But further back, Alonso and Gasly, there was a bit more of a margin. Oh, there's the scrappy final corner for Hulkenberg. Well, there we go. Wheel spin on the way out, lock up on the way in, missed apex. If it cost Hamilton a little bit earlier on, I would say that one actually looked a little bit worse for Hulkenberg, heading towards the barriers and having to really rotate the car at a low speed.
And he only missed out in the end by 0.02 of a second. So Hulkenberg losing it at that final hairpin, the last consequential corner anywhere around this circuit.
But it's tricky because you have to have every corner on the edge. And it looks like, you know, for anyone just tuning in, you think, oh, he should have just been a bit safe at the final corner. If you're safe on all of the corners, you're just going to be really slow. So you have to be giving it absolutely everything. This is cutthroat. And the field is so condensed that if Nico's just cautious, then it might be that the couple of hundredths margin is actually just him being safe rather than his mistake. It's about driving the car absolutely on the limit. And if you're in a Sauber, you have to be perfect to get through.
Hulkenberg, Alonso, Gasly, Stroll and Behrman out in the first part of qualifying. They're already queuing up at the end of the pit lane for the second, which will be 15 minutes on the board. an update for the conditions for you. Track temperature is at 38 degrees. The air temperature remains at 27. McLaren are holding fire for the moment as we have a look at the Hard Rock Stadium. And down there, just in front of the pit building, a green light illuminated once again as we see the drivers head out onto the circuit. Verstappen, Tsunoda, Norris, Piastri, and then Esteban Ocon, George Russell, Alex Albon, Kimi Antonelli, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoleto, Jack Doohan, the only Alpine remaining, and Liam Lawson are the 15 drivers about to slowly make their way onto the circuit, and we'll do it all again. Really encouraging laps for Bortoleto, who was the slowest qualifier on average in the first Grand Prix of the year. His highest position on the grid is 15th, so he's trying to go one better and put his PB on the board by getting past at least one driver in this part of qualifying.
As ever, though, you can never rest on your laurels. He's got to keep digging in and finding more lap time because everyone else will as the track ramps up. So you get your references from a couple of flying laps on the first set of tyres. Then you go again right at the end, put it all together. And now you've got to, with those references, think, where can you exploit a little bit more grip? Where can you brake 5 meters later or release the brakes earlier or carry another gear up and carry minimum speed through? And it's about keeping on top of that with your mind all the time. So you're not only driving as fast as possible, but you're thinking, oh, okay, maybe that was safe. Maybe I can push that a little bit more as the track evolves. And that's what these qualifying hours are all about, really. The grip at the start is very different to the grip at the end, and you have to stay on top of it and maybe make some settings, some car settings as well. There's a load of tools that the drivers have available. There's front wing adjustments if you want to hone the balance. It's an evolving beast.
And Max Verstappen getting out there nice and early. The two-time Miami Grand Prix winner sees Lando Norris exiting the pit lane, but crucially not in his way. This gives you a great vantage point as he goes past Oscar Piastri into the sweepers. Love that direction change. And then you've got to scrub off way more of the speed into turn 7 and 8. Verstappen earlier on down to 17th place after that 10-second penalty. The final classification has been issued. It was Lando Norris who won, Oscar Piastri in second, Lewis Hamilton was in third, George Russell eventually finishing in fourth, Stroll in fifth, Tsunoda from the back to 6th place, Antonelli 7th, Pierre Gasly in 8th position. Penalties for Albon, Lawson and Behrman, along with Verstappen, dropping them out of the points. 12 minutes ago in Q2, we're watching Max Verstappen rotate it around turn 16 and go onto the back straight.
Getting football scores from around the ground. That happened hours ago, but finally we know what the result was of the sprint. There were so many penalties given out. Verstappen looks mighty in the high speed. The car really is dancing on the edge through those corners 4, 5, 6 and 7, and that's where he was very strong yesterday as well. Started to run out of rear grip as the lap went on his soft tyres, but he did 2 flying laps on that soft. I think on one flyer he's looking really quick, and that is proof. He's got a lot of pace.
Verstappen with more tyre sets to play with more laps to attack in this format of qualifying. We go on board with Charles Leclerc. The benchmark time is a 1:26.643. Verstappen, the fastest first sector of anyone so far. Esteban Ocon's on the fastest third sector of anyone so far. Charles Leclerc slots in to second position, and he goes ahead of one Red Bull, but not the other, and he's 0.3 of a second away.
Yeah, customary gap really for Ferrari at the moment, just missing the final 2 or 3 tenths from the pace. Shows that Verstappen's lap was pretty much there for the moment, but let's wait and see what the McLarens can do now. Piastri coming through the first sector right now on a flyer. Sainz jumps up to second, actually gets ahead of Charles Leclerc. Let's see Lewis Hamilton across the line.
See where the second Ferrari can go, just behind his teammate. Charles Leclerc yesterday came over the line and said it wasn't a bad lap, that's just all the pace that's in the car. And both drivers close together suggest that once again on the early effort of Q2. Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, Hamilton and Yuki Tsunoda. Esteban Ocon's in 7th now. Bortoleto's bettered his time.
And neither McLaren can match Verstappen in the first sector. In fact, Norris's first sector is a good few tenths away, so it's not been a clean first attempt here for Norris in Q2. Piastri is quicker than Max in the middle part of the lap. Albon jumps up to second, Makes this a great start to Q2 for Williams.
Williams seemed to roll out the box with so much speed, and then the others seemed to claw the time back. We go on board with Oscar Piastri, the man from Melbourne, round the final two sweepers that complete the lap. And Norris has just done the fastest middle sector, and I tell you what, add it all up, no purple sectors for Oscar Piastri, but he's 0.3 of a second quicker. Here's Lando Norris to slot into second place. He's 0.2 of a second away. McLaren wanted.
Okay, so Piastri is now quicker than Antonelli's pace yesterday. We've now reached the point where the soft tyres are giving more grip than the drivers had yesterday, so the references are back to there. And Piastri's lap is very good. As you said, not the fastest across any sector, but he's very close in all three. And he was deep on the brakes, but held it through that final corner as we joined him.
Antonelli keeps the party going. He's up to third position. We're going to get a back-to-back comparison. And George Russell just doesn't have the feel of his young rookie teammate at the moment. He doesn't have the balance with the car. He doesn't have what he needs from underneath him. He's in 11th, Antonelli's P3.
So that is a used tyre for Russell at this point. Antonelli is on a new set of softs, so Russell has gone a little bit brave to go for a used set straight away. Hamilton also was on a used set, so that was actually a pretty good lap there for Lewis to be so close to his teammate on a used set. But Russell there is giving himself a bit of pressure. Still plenty of time left. It's the longest session today compared to yesterday.
No grip, don't know what's going on.
Not happy with what he's got underneath him. And in the drop zone, along with Esteban Ocon, Jack Doohan, Liam Lawson, and no time on the board for Hadjar.
Bailed out of a lap. Right at the start of the lap as well, Hadjar.
Didn't even have to ask the question. Thanks, Palmer. Appreciate it. 8 minutes and 19 seconds to go. Charles Leclerc with his lead.
No grip, don't know what's going on.
Surtees became the only driver who's won on 2 wheels to win on 4 and claim the Formula 1 World Championship.
It's a nice look over Charles' shoulder there as he was in the pits, doing the Lando Norris scrape of the barriers at turn 16, is he? No, he's only super close.
He's super close. Not
margin.
Even, nowhere near hyper close. Nowhere near brushing the Pirelli logo off the tyre.
It's nice to see on the screen here, looking at Carlos Sainz, over his shoulder there, you can see what the driver's looking at as they come in on these gaps. So they're up on the stands, new tyres going on. They'll be chatting with their engineer and looking at the telemetry data of themselves, most likely compared to their teammate. So Sainz here is half a tenth away from Alex Albon, who gets wheeled in. And we'll have his own data screen there. You can see it blown up in white on the left-hand side. And they'll be looking at where their teammate's better than them, where they can find a little bit more time, if there's a technique difference that they can try as well on the next lap. And sometimes you absorb all that and you think, actually, I'll just do what I'm doing better than try and copy your teammate. But it's always nice to see, just as a point of reference, because sometimes you can just copy their homework a little bit and find a bit of time.
You got the comparison between Piastri and Norris there at the bottom of your picture. Oscar Piastri 2 times on pole position this year. Lando Norris 1 Grand Prix pole in 2025.
Get me out there early. Just no confidence in the car, mate. No grip, sliding everywhere.
Okay, so it was used tyres, but it's no confidence for George Russell either. And Hamilton has proven that used tyres can still be quite usable in the Ferrari there. He's very close to his teammate, even if Ferrari generally are quite a long way away now from the McLaren pace. But Russell wants to have destiny in his own hands. He wants to get out there early. This is a temporary circuit.
Get me out there early. Just no confidence in the car, mate. No grip, sliding everywhere.
As a result of a tough sprint qualifying, so George Russell currently in the bottom 5 and facing elimination unless he can find a better field. He's been talking about the set of tyres and not feeding back the sort of radio messages that we've had across the year, and he's always found himself in the top 5, and the last 2 races he's been inside the top 3 in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. 1 Sauber left in the contest, and that's Gabriel Bortoleto. having found himself eliminated in the last 4 Q1s. Can he find a way into Q3 for the first time in his Formula 1 career?
Well, he's given himself a shot, hasn't he? Great first lap from him in Q2. New softs for him, as it was for everyone behind him, apart from Russell. In fact, 13 of the 15 ran new tyres, so only Russell and Hamilton didn't. And Bortoleto is there in 10th, thousands away from Yuki Tsunoda. He's in the hunt here.
Kimi Antonelli with a new helmet design. So many in the field have got a Miami special out there. Racing Bulls have changed the entire livery of the car, and Bortoleto's gone early. He's decided to get out there ahead of anyone else, not mess around with other cars, and he's gone out, and he's got Ocon and Tsunoda ahead of him, but he's leading the car around now. Turn 5, turn 6, everyone making their way onto the circuit.
But not George Russell, who wanted to get out on track early and have destiny in his own hands. So he was very clear on the radio, get me out there early. I don't have the confidence, but there he is, mired in the traffic coming out of the pits. He will have plenty of time to get round, but he's not going to have the clear track ahead of him, and he's not going to have his destiny in his own hands, because there are plenty of cars ahead that are going to be pushing, trying to get times on the board, and anything can happen on this sort of circuit.
So Yuki Tsunoda is trying to return to Q3 for Red Bull after his SQ1 elimination yesterday. Bortoleto is trying to make it for the first time in his Formula 1 career. Russell's trying to get back to Q3 like he's made in every single session so far this season. Ocon has seen his teammate do it earlier in the year. He's trying to get a Haas there for the first time since joining the American team, and we join the Frenchman now.
And Isaac Hadjar has been a regular Q3 runner who didn't get a time on the board on the first effort there, but he was flying as well yesterday. We'll be hoping to get his name up into the top 10 once again. The field is so close, the perfect lap will see any of them jump in. So let's see if Esteban Ocon can wind it up now for his first attempt then, the first man on the end of some new tyres. Q2, let's go.
One-time Grand Prix winner finding himself with an American team on American soil, and that's not what you need. Hugely committed at speed, and the car nearly snapping away from him.
Yeah, really on the limit of oversteer for Ocon, and surely he's had to blend out of the throttle for risk of losing the car there as he sweeps now into the triple left-hander. Got to punch out of this corner well, avoid that curb as he sweeps around the Racing Bulls car, and you can see no improvement there, just hanging on to it. But that might be, he's going to have to take something mega now for Ocon to get himself through.
Could luck into a slipstream if he times things nicely, but these cars are on outlaps. He went early. He decided to go early. Ocon knows he's got to find a 10th of a second here in the final 2 sectors after the car was loose through the sweepers at the start of the lap.
Tsunoda's on a really good lap in the Red Bull, so this should launch Yuki well up into the higher reaches, the top 10 at the moment. Hadjar's done a nice first sector as well. You can see Ocon, he's finding time, but so is everyone around him. The benchmarks are about to tumble, so he really has to execute a perfect final sector. He's got a bit of a slipstream from the car ahead. Gets it on the brakes, no lock-up, nicely to the apex. Now use the new tyre grip on the exit and drive to the line.
Tsunoda goes up to 8th position. Esteban Ocon goes past our camera and goes up to 9th. He stayed with it. He's got an improvement, but Bortoleto will believe that he can find an improvement that's worth 0.2 of a second.
Tsunoda left something on the table in the final sector. Maybe a small mistake from Yuki, and he's barely ahead in the end of Esteban Ocon, and certainly not safe in the other Red Bull. Hamilton's down to 10th. Russell is 12th. Big-name drivers need to pull out big laps, and Hadjar squeezes in.
For the moment, the Frenchman finds himself just behind Esteban Ocon. 1 minute to go. George Russell currently in 13th. He's got a personal best in the first sector.
Hamilton's on a really average lap as well. He's through 2 sectors, and he has to put in something magic at the end because he's in the drop zone.
Hamilton has made Q3 at every Grand Prix qualifying hour so far since he's been a Ferrari driver. That is under threat. And his old teammate working the wheel, trying to get the car to speak to him with a new set of soft tyres on the car. And you can see that Russell is having a much better lap, and he's going to demote Hadjar if it stays this way.
Hamilton's not made it. Hamilton is out. He's 11th and hasn't improved at the end. What about George Russell? 1 corner to go.
So Russell goes through the hairpin at turn 17. The man who's always been in the top 5 has taken Q3 as a given, and he finds himself up to third. That was a pressure lap, and a pressure lap delivered for George Russell. He finds his way into the top 10 shootout. Can Jack Doohan get there? Personal best sector 1 and 2, and he stays in 14th position. And the Alpine driver had his best lap at the end there, but it wasn't enough to launch him up. Liam Lawson currently in 15th position, comes over the line, and he stays P15. And it's Hadjar, Hamilton, Bortoleto, Doohan and Lawson, the 5 to fall for the first time since he joined Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton will not make the top 10 shooter.
Disappointment for Hamilton after the highs of the sprint earlier on, back in the top 3. You just think, can he take the confidence from it? He's only 600ths away from Charles Leclerc. The pace of the Ferrari just is not there at the moment. And Hamilton, it seems, had an oversteer at turn 2. We're not going to see it. We're going to see the end of the lap for him.
Once again, second time in the qualifying session, he's deep into turn 17.
He was already down on the sectors before turn 17. So the last lap, we didn't see any of it, but he was half a second away from his personal best, which was not good enough to get through. So he's tried to make it up with some final corner heroics there, and he's bitten off more than he can chew, but the lap was already going away from him in sectors 1 and 2. There were no improvements at the end there for Hamilton.
Esteban Ocon will be pleased with that effort. He is into Q3 for the first time this season, and the first time with Haas. They have a car inside the top 10 at one of 3 home races that they have.
Now, Ocon did really well, because we watched the start of that lap and it was leery as anything. And when you're in the car at that moment, you just think, you start to panic really. You think, oh no, I've blown the whole lap. We watched it thinking, oh, he's probably blown the whole lap. But he's then had to reset. There are another 16 corners to try and regroup and perfect, and he's managed to put in a great middle sector, get nicely through the final sector. We saw him squeeze on the throttle with no wheel spin, no lock up at the final corner, where it's very easy to make an absolute hash of things, and he's done a great job to sneak through.
Isaac Hadjar just missing out. He's in 11th, which is where he qualified at the start of the season in Melbourne. Lewis Hamilton, his first Q2 exit with Ferrari. Best ever career result in qualifying for Gabriel Bortoleto in 13th, and Jack Doohan out-qualifies Pierre Gasly for the first time since they became Alpine teammates.
Oh, come on, man. Oh my God.
That's how Isaac used to sound in Formula 2, and he dialed it out for Formula 1. He said earlier in the week, he's still shouting in the car. He's just remembered not to press the radio button as much now that he's in Formula 1. Little bit of a hint of what we used to hear. Man who wears his heart on his sleeve.
But I kind of enjoy the passion from Hadjar at the moment. He's really quick. He's doing a great job. Every qualifying session he's in the top 10 or frustrated not.
Oh, come on, man. Oh my God.
So disappointment for Liam Lawson. Doesn't sound like he had the full deployment underneath him.
What the wait, what is going on with this battery?
We do have a problem, clearly, and that's what we tried to manage the whole session, unfortunately, and it seems that we didn't really get the
One thing we should mention is that turns 4, 5, 6, 7. Yesterday in sprint qualifying, Lewis was 0.166 seconds slower than Charles in that session, and he has made a step. Is that setup? Is that driving? We don't know. But starting from P12, maybe he can do something. Max Verstappen won from P9 here by doing a reverse strategy a couple of years ago. He doesn't quite have the same car as that, but we'll have to wait and see. Track evolution is going to be everything. It's slowed right down, actually. SQ1 was very, very high, about 0.06. Now we're seeing it going really rather flat with a bunch of drivers not actually improving, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Thank you, Ruth. Appreciate you diving into the numbers.
And that is...
These are the best laps I can do. I cannot go faster than that, literally.
Against Lando Norris last year, for reference, it was 20-4 to Lando Norris. George Russell 5-0 up on Kimi Antonelli, but Kimi Antonelli was the driver on sprint pole yesterday, and he does seem to have a balance and a feel around this circuit which has given him real confidence. Alex Albon's partner Lily watching on. 2 Williams in the final part of qualifying for the second time this year. They also did that in Melbourne.
Halcyon days for Williams at the moment. Probably a nice place to be in the garage. 2 cars in Q3. You've got Lewis Hamilton out. You've got Charles Leclerc wondering where his pace has gone. Yuki Tsunoda has done well to get into Q3. That's a solid effort from him, but if you're Williams, you're still thinking you can pick off the second Red Bull seat, so there's a good opportunity here for Albon and Sainz to get themselves a good look in at points for tomorrow. Albon, of course, finished 4th in that sprint earlier on, but was penalised for a safety car infringement, so could make up with some points tomorrow.
Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda has made Q3 now for Red Bull, which is not always given with that second car, for 3 Grand Prix weekends in a row. So that was one of the absolute minimums that they expected from that second car. Yuki able to deliver under the pressure of qualifying.
I think he's done overall a solid job. We've got to remember with Yuki, he didn't have any pre-season testing in this car. And when you look at Lewis Hamilton struggling, you look at how long it took Carlos to get used to the Williams as well. Sort of 4, 5 races. This is race 4 for Yuki in the Red Bull, but without pre-season testing as well. New engineers, new ways of working. A car that he says is very spiky in terms of get it right, it can be quick, but fall either way of the setup parameters or you're driving, and the grip level falls away, meaning it's very easy to make mistakes. So Tsunoda to start inside the top 10 again, I think is confidence boosting for him. But now he needs to try and get ahead of those Williams. He needs to try and get himself maybe onto the 3rd row and be able to see his teammate at the start of the race tomorrow.
That's what Yuki Tsunoda is hoping for. His best start around this circuit, P9. That he scored in his first visit to the racetrack back in 2022. We have a green light at the end of the pit lane. It is time for Q3. We're going to get the rapid laps of the weekend ahead of us now. And who is going to step forward and take the 6th Grand Prix pole of the season? We've had 2 for Oscar Piastri, 2 for Max Verstappen. Lando Norris started things off in Melbourne. And who is going to take today's one? We're on board with the man who won here last year for his first ever Formula 1 Grand Prix victory. He won the sprint earlier on, and he added 4 more Grand Prix wins to that triumph in Miami last season, and then he was able to take the win in Melbourne at the start of the year, chased all the way home by Max Verstappen.
I think it's his teammate who's going to be the man to beat at the moment, though. Piastri has the best lap of the weekend, set there in Q2, and he looks more consistent at getting the pace out of the car still over 1 lap. Verstappen is going to be in the mix on one flyer at the end here. He can put things together. We've seen it already a couple of times this season. In Jeddah last time out, nailed it. In Suzuka, it's one of his great qualifying laps to get on pole. But I think on paper it should be McLaren still for the taking, and Piastri is the driver that's extracted that little bit more. Can Lando bury his Q3 demons and get himself at least right up there and be in the fight for the win tomorrow.
That is the aim. Can McLaren lock out the front row like they did at the start of the campaign with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri to give themselves the strategic options? It has been a brilliant season for qualifying. We've seen that yesterday. It's been great variation all the way through. Lewis Hamilton had a sprint pole. Kimi Antonelli had a sprint pole last time out. Piastri, Verstappen and Norris are drivers at the front of the World Championship standings, all out there fighting for Grand Prix pole in Miami.
Verstappen starts his flying lap now. He will get another chance. They've all got 2 shots in Q3, unlike yesterday, but this is the first attempt to lay down a marker. And I love the attitude of the Red Bull in these high-speed corners. If we stay with him, look how much curve he takes, sweeping through the left-hander of 4, but then here at turn 5, actually, he was a little bit more reserved on that occasion before stomping across the curb on the apex of 6.
Let's have a comparison with Oscar Piastri going through the same corners a few seconds later.
Verstappen's quick, 28.2 is a good first sector. Piastri now into the high speed, and he is more reserved over those curbs through turns 4 and 5, settles himself in for turns 6, 7, and now he's got to pick up an exit for 8, and there's a bit of an oversteer there for Piastri, and he's down on Verstappen in the first sector.
That's a sizable gap for sector 1, but we did see from Esteban Ocon what can be done in the second and third sectors. Verstappen hustling the Red Bull, looking for a strong foundation on this first run in Q3.
The McLaren has been better in the middle sector. That's where Piastri is right now, hugging the apex through turn 12. In the low speed, they've been able to find the pace, and Piastri just munches over that curve, left and right, as Verstappen heads to the final corner.
Verstappen is chasing pole position number 43 in his Formula One career. It's been a tidy lap, it's been a quick lap, and it's a lap that the McLarens will have to better. Time on the board, about to be set, is a 1:26.492.
Norris is the McLaren that is finding the pace, though. Here we go with Oscar Piastri through the final corner. He'll drive to the line, but behind him by 10 seconds, his teammate's going quicker.
It's currently Max Verstappen fastest. It remains Max Verstappen fastest. It's not much, it's 100th of a second for Oscar Piastri, but Lando Norris trying to take pole position around Miami. Can he go to provisional pole? No, he misses out by 0.003 of a second. And it's Verstappen by fine margins ahead of the McLarens. Over to Antonelli, the man who was on sprint pole yesterday. And part of the reason why was he was so brave into this corner. Can he keep it going? Sainz is in 5th. Albon is in 4th. Antonelli over the line. Can he get ahead of the Williams? He can, and he improves to 4th position.
Mercedes just gave up too much time earlier on in the lap, and Antonelli was right there through the second and third sectors, but it wasn't enough, and Russell comes through, and it's nowhere near enough for George Russell on this occasion, again trailing his teammate by a solid margin.
And trailing Alex Albon in the Williams. P5 for Alex Albon as it stands. It's Verstappen ahead of the McLaren pair. This is Russell into turn 17.
Yeah, well, that's as bad as we've seen through 17. We've seen various occasions of drivers locking up, and that one Russell almost found himself completely off the track. And that is where the lap time went for Lando as well. He was flying. He had the fastest middle sector of anyone. Same for Charles Leclerc. 3 of the big names not able to stop the car for that final corner, and it's so enticing, that corner. You arrive at 210 plus miles per hour. You have to brake late and really hard, stamp the left pedal to slow the car down to an apex. You've got the hit of new grip, so it should stop as well as anything, but if you push it too hard, you're going to be into that lockup. And that's what happened for all 3 of them, and it's probably cost Norris a really strong provisional pole. Only 3,000 still separates him from Verstappen, but he could have had that one. And 17,000 separate the top 3.
Unbelievable. The top 3 contenders in the World Championship separated by less than 200ths of a second. And Kimi Antonelli, after sprint pole yesterday, is 0.2 of a second away. A majestic first lap from Alex Albon puts him ahead of George Russell. Carlos Sainz in 7th, Ocon in 8th, and Yuki Tsunoda in 9th position. Charles Leclerc in 10th after that lockup at the final turn. And will Piastri go more aggressive around those fast turns, or where he has been flinging the car through the chicane at 14 and 15?
He does the triple jump through turn 15. It's bouncing already, and then look at this. off we go. And off we go again, coming through turn 15. He just nails it across that curb, takes a bumpy ride and finds a bit of pace there. But he lost too much in the first sector. That's where Verstappen is the fastest driver still. Norris was the middle ground. Norris was a tenth quicker than Piastri in that first sector, so Oscar's got plenty to find there. Verstappen is just so committed in those fast corners. There you go, the track dominance. Turn 4 to turn 8 is mullering the McLarens, and then the rest of the lap is just how much both McLarens can take back.
Oh, it sets us up so nicely for the final runs when we know that that's the balance of power between Verstappen and Norris. Norris knowing that the lap, well, there were 16 great corners in it for Lando Norris. He should have had provisional pole, but it's not over until you've rotated the car through the hairpin and sent it back to the line.
How many times have we said that for Lando as well? In Q3 particularly. I'm thinking back to China, and this is a circuit that's
the way they can make up its
not
mind,
massively like China, but it is in the way that there's a massive stop at the end of a long straight at the end of the lap, and that's where Lando in sprint qualifying in Shanghai and qualifying actual in Shanghai was making mistakes, locking up. He's struggling to feel the grip underneath the car this year and trying to get the car right on the edge of entry speed, trying to make sure that it's right there, carrying the speed in without overcooking it, either with an oversteer, which he's had a couple of times, including Jeddah, or a big lockup, which he had here and Shanghai. That has been his Achilles heel, and he'd be so frustrated because he did, as you say, 16 great corners, but it's been undone with one.
So Max Verstappen's trying to take the most pole positions so far this year. If he goes to 3, he would have the most ahead of the McLaren drivers with 3. Lando Norris trying to return to pole position for the first time since the opening round of the year. The championship leader, Piastri, trying to keep this great momentum going. Antonelli trying to bridge the gap, but crucially be the lead Mercedes on the grid in a Grand Prix format for the first time since he joined the team in Formula 1.
It's probably too much to ask for Antonelli to find a quarter of a second and no one else to find anything ahead. I think Mercedes have fallen away a little bit from where they were yesterday. Never say never with what we've seen so far this season, but it looks to be a 3-car fight for pole, and any of them can take it. Whichever driver now puts together the cleanest of laps, that is going to be your pole sitter for tomorrow. We have seen so far this year how crucial starting at the front can be. Overtaking is not easy in this era of Formula 1. If you start at the front and you keep at the front through the first corner, you have strategic options, you have such an advantage, and it is thousands that are deciding these positions.
So Antonelli in 4th. Albon would be delighted with 5th place if he can stay there. It would be his season's best if he can convert what he did on the first run by the time that he finishes the second. Russell will want to be the lead Mercedes on the grid once again. That's been the case at all the races so far. Ocon has made Q3 for the first time with Haas. He'll be pleased with that. Tsunoda will try and improve after a difficult time. Charles Leclerc just wants a time on the board. Here we go then. We're winding up on board with the world champion Max Verstappen attacking the Miami International Autodrome. He's the driver to beat, but there's a big moment into turn 1 that he gathered up.
Yeah, he didn't have that before. Oversteer through the apex of turn 1, banging it down the gears, getting to the apex in the rear, just sliding away from Max. And now we get to the area where he's been so strong, drifting it seems, through 4 and 5. This is looking lively on this lap, maybe too lively for Verstappen.
We'll get a comparison, and you can see he is up by 0.02 of a second, but has that movement opened the door for the McLaren pair? Let's get a direct comparison with Lando Norris through the same corners.
Much cleaner. He's right up to the apex of turn 1, driving it through 2 and 3, and now we're heading up towards the fast stuff at turn 4 with Lando. That cannot be the quickest way for Verstappen to drive through these corners, but you see the difference. Norris is a bit more cautious through these high-speed corners, and now he's got to set himself up through turn 8, get on the gas and head out. Verstappen's making a nice job of it. Norris maybe a little bit too cautious.
Verstappen going hyper-aggressive in the left-hand side of your screen. He is improving, and it will be over to Oscar Piastri, who's behind. It's not a good first sector for Piastri either.
It's even worse for Piastri than Norris. So the both McLarens have to find a lot of time as Verstappen now drives to the line.
Verstappen cuts the beam, Verstappen improves, a mighty lap again, with the McLarens trying to answer back, but it's a great lap when it mattered for Max Verstappen, but Norris is still in the mix.
It comes down to the final corner. They are basically neck and neck. There is 9 thousandths between Norris and Verstappen, and we know the McLaren is good round the rest of the lap. I think Piastri has left it too little too late after the first sector. Here comes Norris balancing over the curb.
It's Norris versus Verstappen for Grand Prix pole in Miami. Norris comes over the line and he misses out by 0.06 of a second. Verstappen has provisional pole within his grasp. Norris couldn't get there. Piastri, it was a great final sector, but it was undone at the start of the lap. And now, will Antonelli go all in at the final hairpin to try and improve? Sainz is up to 4th. Haul on the anchors for Kimi Antonelli. Can he improve and get up there with the McLarens?
Oh, it's looking nice. It's looking nice for Antonelli through the final corner.
He's got the Williams ahead of him. Sainz in 4th, Albon in 5th. Antonelli gets ahead of Piastri, and Antonelli only misses out of being on the front row again by 2 thousandths of a second. Russell completes the order, and he's fought his way back to the top 5 once again. First time he's been out-qualified by his teammate in Formula One when it comes to the Grand Prix format. But Max Verstappen went aggressive, attacked the lap, and his reward, Grand Prix pole number 3 in 2025.
Another belting qualifying session as well. You can hear the cheers from the crowd. They have seen some exquisite driving today. How Verstappen managed to be as sideways as he was in the first sector but keep the speed up was quite impressive. I think this moment is going to cost Lando Norris pole position. He bangs over this curb way too aggressively, and I think he's cautious on the brakes. So he locked up there on the first time. I think he's gone too early on the brakes, which means he just hasn't gone far enough into the corner to turn it. He wants to be avoiding that curb, and if he does, I think pole is there for Norris, but he bounces over it. He has to wait for the throttle, and Verstappen has done enough just by taking the Red Bull by the scruff of the neck, hanging on to it, and it's another fantastic Verstappen qualifying performance.
Max Verstappen out of the car, having secured career pole position number 43. What a season it has been for Formula One qualifying. And Verstappen again over 1 lap. Absolutely grasping things this year, and he has beaten Lando Norris by 0.06 of a second, beaten Kimi Antonelli by 0.06 of a second. Oscar Piastri, that is the largest margin he has been away from pole all year long, and George Russell keeps it in the top 5. Not what he wanted, but improved past the Williams. Sainz got Albon at the end, and so it is Sainz the lead Williams on the grid. Charles Leclerc got ahead of Esteban Ocon, and Ocon got ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. An encouraging day for Ocon. Tsunoda at least made Q3. Disappointment for Leclerc. Both Williams in Q3 again. Antonelli out-qualifies George Russell for the 2nd qualifying session in a row, and the first time for a Grand Prix. Piastri P4. And it all came down to that. I'm loving the hairpin in the qualifying format. Lots of errors from the best drivers in the world. And these two friends in conversation once again. They'll be separated by 8 meters between 1st and 2nd when the 5 red lights go out.
And we're set for another thriller tomorrow. We've got to get our breath back after that. We've had, what a day it's been. A majestic sprint race, a fantastic qualifying session. Again, 3 cars separated by less than a tenth. And 3 different teams. Again, Antonelli, cracking job from him to be back up in the top 3. High fives to Verstappen and Norris. I think he's going to be a regular at the sharp end, isn't he? Kimi Antonelli. Great job from him. Managed to pull it back.
Yeah, great job from him, especially considering the disappointment of earlier on when it realistically unwound for him in the first meters of the race. He's bounced back brilliantly. Max Verstappen saying, I can't believe you've got all the radio pack and the equipment there. That's clearly a Mercedes spec that Red Bull don't have. The driver's comparing it. And in the top 3 for the first time in Grand Prix qualifying after a great performance on Friday as well. And 3 different teams as well in the top 3, separated by 67 thousandths of a second. Martin Brundle is speaking to the top 3 qualifiers.
Many congratulations, Max. First of all, on the birth of Lily this week. What a wonderful week you've had already. First time I've had a chance to see you. Spectacular. And then today, pole position. Where do you find this time? It's extraordinary. You magic time up out of somewhere.
Yeah, it's been a great qualifying. I think we improved the car a tiny amount as well, which helped me to basically rotate it a bit better. And honestly, you know, Q1, Q2, Q3, just improving every run, really. Trying to find a bit more the limit. I had a tiny moment on my final lap into turn 1, so I lost a bit of time there, but around here it's just very complicated with the tires over a lap. But at the end, it worked out well, so I'm very happy, of course, to be on pole.
Yeah, because the back end stepped out on you in turn 1, but you obviously had the confidence just to keep pinning it.
I mean, you can back out of it, but it's
an incredible drive.
Corrected and just floor it out of the corner.
So you're in the right place. It could well be wet tomorrow. The track was pretty difficult earlier on today in the sprint.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, race pace, I don't know. We have to wait and see for the weather, but it's the best starting position. That's always positive. And then in the race, of course, is a whole different story, but of course we'll try to maximize everything we can.
Well done.
Thank you.
Lando, P2, top McLaren, but Max found the ounce of extra speed somewhere.
No, to Max, especially being a dad now. I was hoping it was going to slow him down a little bit, but it clearly didn't. So, no, I'm happy with today. Happy with the progress I've been making with the car, with myself. So, no, Max did a max lap once again, and I can't fault him. So, happy and excited.
I didn't have such a clean run like I had yesterday, but that last lap was quite good. I was a bit too greedy in turn 1, starting the lap, but the rest of the lap was quite good, so I'm happy with it.
I think it was more than quite good. You split the mighty McLarens to put yourself right in contention.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, the gaps are super tight, and definitely, you know, if you can gain just few hundreds, you can make up so many places. So it's really about putting everything together. And so far this weekend,
that we've seen.
And hopefully tomorrow we can have a good race.
And we look forward to that.
Thank you so much.
Kimi Antonelli rounding out the top 3 interviews. He'll be